Hey guys, welcome back to the Growing Pains podcast. I'm your host, Alyson, and today I sit down with Kacia Ghetmiri. You guys, this is a high-paced and super valuable episode. Kacia brings the energy to pretty much everything she does, and I'm super fortunate to be connected with this mom who is a fellow Coloradan, and she's just amassed this like super interesting portfolio of different things inside of her business. And so Kacia is a high-energy life enthusiast, she says, wife and new mom. Her podcast, Empower Her, which I am an incredible listener of. Highly recommend it if you guys haven't checked it out. It's one of the top rated personal growth podcasts with over 10 million downloads. She's also co-host of the Get Investing podcast with her husband, Sina, which is all about helping people get started on real estate investing. Also highly recommend that show. She's personally helped hundreds of women launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts, strategically grow aligned businesses through her programs and live events. And with her husband, Sina, she's also built a $6.5 million real estate investment portfolio over the last 2 years. Like you guys, really fast. She's all about pulling back the curtain to transparently share her journey in life and business and show, kind of what's possible for you guys. So I really do think you're going to love this episode. She's so upbeat and she really encourages not only being able to be multi-passionate and follow your intuition, but also bring this enthusiasm and this fun into what you're doing, especially in the early stages of motherhood. So I know you guys are going to love yourself some Kacia. I will see you inside. Kacia, welcome to Growing Pains. I am so excited to have you here.
I'm seriously so excited for this conversation, even just like us connecting. Like, I have no idea what direction we're going to go, but I know it's going to be so impactful. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Isn't that like the mission statement of motherhood and business ownership, though? It's like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm running full speed. So like,
Yes.
Brace yourself.
And I'm excited about it.
Well, tell us a little bit. So like for the folks who maybe haven't heard all the incredible things that you're involved in, like give us the high level. Tell us about your business and the things you're involved in and the family that you have at home.
Yeah. So I have a couple of different businesses, which I think will connect with some of the people listening into this, where I would not identify as like one lane being my thing. But my favorite thing is my husband and I have been together for 16 years and we have our son, Brody, who is now 1 year old. So I'm in that stage of motherhood where like he's starting to walk and I'm trying to figure out like who I am now that I have a little bit more independence. We're out of the newborn bubble. And that's really exciting in itself. Back in 2018, I started a podcast called Empower Her, and the community built around that show. And I really just built this community to figure out what problems that community had that I was most excited to solve. And ironically, that turned into helping hundreds of women launch podcasts, grow and monetize their shows, build online businesses. It turned into 500-person women's events and intimate retreats and keynote speaking for me. And then from that, at the time, and we can dig into this as much as you want to, but as that business was starting to scale, my husband was a dentist and he's Persian. So he felt the pressure of his parents are immigrants here. It was like be a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, or an engineer. So he picked dentist. I knew right away he didn't love it. So as my business started to take off, not just from a financial perspective, but from a fulfillment, impact, and just like fun perspective, he saw me get so excited about it that it had him contrasting his day-to-day life and turned into him wanting to leave dentistry and get into real estate. Me having a business where everything I did required me to be on, like many businesses, like service-based businesses. And in the back of my head, I was like, what are we going to do when we start a family? So we started heavily investing in real estate, taking all of the active income from my business, pouring it into now we have a $7 million portfolio of like Airbnbs, quadplex, rental units. And it's been a really wild journey because now he left dentistry. We're two entrepreneurs. We're doing all these things. I also just joined a startup for 7 to 9 figure female founders. And it's just like, it's a lot of juggling things, as is motherhood, as is life. So here we are.
My gosh, honestly, you've got so many irons in the fire. And honestly, I find that inspiring. So honestly, Kacia, like the two things that really sit with me out of like your rap sheet, if you will, like all the stuff that you're involved in is like, number one, you gotta pursue what's fun. And like, I experienced that about you. And I think a lot of times too, when we're trying to find our footing in like business ownership and parenthood and all the things we are, talk to me about how you like really try to prioritize the fun, because I think a lot of the rhetoric around business is like, you gotta hustle, you gotta grind, you gotta do the things you don't want to do. You got to fill in all the gaps in your business. But then we forget that it is about having a good time and like transforming people's lives. So how do you do that?
So I think that it's easier for me to stay consistent at the things that I'm excited about, as with probably anyone. So really using my excitement, my enthusiasm, my joy as a compass to help guide me in what's next has been really
Mm,
helpful for me in business. Because really, as entrepreneurs, like we're just solving problems. So asking yourself through the lens of what problem am I most excited to solve is so valuable because there's so many things. Like I have like, especially for anyone that's listening and it's like a serial like entrepreneur, it's like I have 800 million business ideas and I should definitely not pursue all of them. Otherwise, I am just like all over the place. But really just using that like the framework of if I'm excited about it, I'm going to show up consistently to it. If I show up
mm,
consistently to it, I'm going to get better at it because like with anything that we do that's brand new, we suck at the beginning and we don't get to skip
mm.
that stage, right? And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I've noticed that like often we talk about comparison of like comparing ourselves to other people and how damaging that can be. But what I've
Mhm.
actually struggled with more, and I'm very aware of now, is comparing myself to a prior version of myself when the circumstances were different. So,
Interesting.
starting something new, it's like I have to remember that if I'm starting a new business or a new offer, or I don't know, like moving into being a mom for the first time, it's like, and every single stage that I'm going to go through in motherhood, I can anticipate in the future. It's like I've never done it before. So,
Mhm.
naturally, I just feel overwhelmed by not knowing what I'm doing. But if I'm excited still, because it's an aligned choice for what I feel like is going to light me up, I can work through some of that beginning resistance and even just be more cautious of the narrative because it's like, yes, I'm excited and I suck,
Mm.
but if I keep putting in reps, I'm going to get better. And that's just like par for the course in any type of business that we have or any offers that we have. But for me, it's just like a through line in literally every aspect of my life.
I love that, like comparing yourself to your other self in other circumstances, like, or your past self in other circumstances. I think that's really true of moms. Like, my
Yeah.
plate natively shrank when I became
Yeah.
a mother, right? And I think, like, we all, especially us type A's, right? Like, the ones who are like, I'm going to get this done. I'm going to go meet the people. I'm going to go make the things happen.
Yeah.
We suddenly feel or can feel like we're just hamstrung, right? From getting
Yeah.
some of those big things forward. So, did that happen with you when you had Brody? And how did you kind of work through that? Or how
I
are you working through that?
Oh, girl, I was like so naive, and I'm glad I was. I was so naive about how I was going to approach being a mom and being a business owner. I legitimately thought that I would just still be able to approach my business the same way, but I would just like have like a cute little sidekick. Like I just did not know.
Love
I'm
it.
glad that I felt that way, but intentionally, I like really proactively prepared to try and like give myself a little bit of space at the beginning. Like, and I know obviously you talk a lot about like maternity leaves and whatnot, where I proactively was like closing down programs. I really like dissolved a lot of my business, just trusting that a future version of me after having a baby would know what I wanted to jump back into next and gave myself the space, which was amazing. But for me to feel like a full, complete, happy person, I have to do things that are like stretching my brain outside of just the impacts that I'm making in our house. Like I just wouldn't have been fulfilled being a mom and not also building a business. So
Mm.
when I started to get back into things, I was like, okay, I think I'm feeling a little bit better. And then it's like sleep regression hits, and then it's like teeth hits. And then all of a sudden I'm like, it's just like there's so many different stages and you don't know what you don't know. But now
Yeah.
sitting here 1 year, our son just turned a year old last week. So sitting here at this 1 year mark, I feel so much more myself in that like I feel like the old version of me, but actually amplified because now I've got this like
Mm.
mama bear energy. And I recognize because we're in like the repeating everything I do stage, like, like, but I'm doing like blowing kisses and he does it back to me. And like we're in that stage right now. So I'm
So
like,
sweet.
he's watching everything I'm doing. And I need him for me to feel good. I need him to see me lit up about being a mom, but also lit up about the work that I'm doing outside of motherhood, which means I just have to figure out how to integrate this all and like have this juggling act. So I'm in it. And I'll be in it for forever as we all are, right?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. I love the way you position this because I think a lot of us think like, oh, we just have the baby and then there's that like obligatory 3 month period and then we just are back. We just like bounce back.
Yeah.
It's life as it was before and all these things. But I actually have been more recently just fully embracing the fact that now I was saying earlier to one of my teammates, we had a call this morning And I was like, my intuition is telling me to go in this direction. Like, are you excited to follow me into this arena? And I said, and I just want to note that, like, Allie from 4 years ago, before I had Frank, I would have never, ever, I'd have been like, boo, show me the data, boo. Like, I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
And so, like, how have you balanced like leaning into some of the intuitive pieces of running your company, knowing that that's a huge piece of it, but also keeping yourself grounded on like the model perspective?
Gosh, it's like, I feel like depending upon the day and the time that you ask me this question, I would have a different answer. In real time, I am feeling like so excited about new things that I'm doing in a different way than what I did before. So I've been a solo
Mm,
entrepreneur for 10 years. And now I recently just came into a startup that two of my girlfriends had like gotten taken off the ground. Basically, let me kind of give more context to this actually. So I do a lot of keynote speaking work wise, and I have for
mm,
years. And I decided that I would proactively be saying no to everything that I was not going to do any travel without my son for the first chunk of time. And I had the luxury and privilege of like being able to do that. That's what I really wanted.
mm,
Worked really hard to get to that point. So happy I did that. About 10 months postpartum, I decided to fly out to this event in New York that two of my girlfriends were hosting for this new company that they started. When I got in that room and I was like talking, yes, about motherhood, but also talking about business and like using this other part of my
mm,
brain again, where I felt like I was this like fully lit up version of me. It was like something in my brain was like, you cannot do things the way that you did them before. And it's because
mhm.
you don't want to. Instead of like placing it on like my child is my like excuse that I can't do it, it was like my child is my reason that I need to get more excited about business. Cause when I'm taking time away from
Yeah.
him, I'm getting into my business. I want it to be because I'm excited and I'm passionate. I'm making the impact that I want to make and the income that I want to make, etc. And that actually had me go down this path of like, I've always done this by myself. Maybe this is the time for me to do something with partners. So I came into a
Mm,
startup as a equity partner and their chief growth officer of this new company. And part of the reason I did that is because I'm like, I want to do something that's so much bigger than I could do alone. But
mm,
also, like, I want to just feel connected. The other two founders of the company are both moms too. Like, I just want to feel connected to people that are in the thick of it with me. And we're all
mm.
brilliant, but we're also trying to juggle all of this at the same time because at the stage, like 10 years into entrepreneurship, I was like, I just don't want to do it by myself anymore. So
Yeah.
it's weird because the criteria in which like I say yes to things is different now, but even like
Mhm,
letting myself be open to this new version of me that's now a mom, like what does she actually want? And in
mm.
this stage, it was like she just wants more like support and community and connections and doing something with other people, which I could have, I literally could have never anticipated that I would ever want to go into business with someone else because I'm just like a fly by the seat
Mm.
of my pants person. But that was before I had a baby. And now I'm like, give me some structure, baby. Like I need structure because it's chaotic enough to have a 1 year old. I don't need chaos in my business, you know?
Yeah, totally. I love like that you're embracing that shift. And I know you did a pod a couple of weeks ago
Yeah.
about like grieving what was. And I think that's honestly,
Yeah.
maybe let's like soak in that for a second,
Mm.
because I think that especially for some of us faster paced entrepreneurs and folks who are like, I'm all in, baby, let's do this. I
Yeah.
think sometimes we like forget that really important emotional panel of like just being like,
Mm.
oh man, that might mean that I need to be slower to make some decisions, or that
Yeah.
might mean I need to do something on someone else's time. Talk to me about that experience for you.
Yeah. Gosh. I just think like sometimes we bypass the grief stage if we are excited about a new move, like a new offer, a new business, a new role, whatever it may be. But like, I just think about the fact that any sort of change, even if it's a positive change, has grief associated with it because grief comes from loss and change means loss of the familiar, right? So it's like,
Right.
I've done things a certain way for so long. So even jumping into motherhood at first, right? I felt that way where it was like I was so excited about this next chapter and like getting
Mhm.
to see my husband become a dad in our little like family unit. But I'm like, wait a second, we can't just like pop and go get coffee, just the two of us, because we have this tiny
Totally.
human that we're responsible for. And
Hmm.
I think people didn't. I saw a lot of negative perspective on motherhood when I was pregnant, and that really irritated me because I really didn't
Yes.
see a lot of positives about it. But I didn't hear many people talking about the grief element that, like, it can still be so exciting, but there's also grief of the loss of your old life that you just know you'll never have back. And I felt that way with a lot of career changes that I've made, in particular, the episode that you're referring to from Empower Her, when I was talking about coming into the startup, where it's like, as
Mm,
excited as I am about what's next, it's so drastically different. Like, I've never had a full team. I've never worked with two other visionaries who have their own input on how we can take things to the next level. And I want that, but I still am grieving like, man, it was really easy when I was the only decision maker. Right. And then it's like,
yeah.
but I know that it's right. And so I think it's like, almost like allowing ourselves to be excited and grieve, and knowing that there's nothing wrong with us if we're feeling those two emotions simultaneously, and just normalizing conversations like this of like, of course you're going to feel sad to a certain degree that you don't have the freedom that you once had when you had a baby, but of course you're also going to be really excited, and those two things coexist, whether that's business
Mm,
change or motherhood changes. I guess I didn't really expect it, but I'm really trying to not bypass the emotions, because I know that they're really valuable to like teach me something and equip me with more skills, and also just make me be able to connect with people on a more deep level, because I'm not just
mm.
trying to have positive emotions. I'm trying to have the full spectrum of the human experience.
Totally. And I think like a lot of folks associate grief with being really sad. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm grieving this thing. I'm supposed to feel really sad or whatever." But grief can also mean like anxiety or high levels of
Yeah.
stress or anger or
Yeah.
other
True.
emotions like that. And I think too, like when we go into these new opportunities and we talk about postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression and all that stuff, it really
Yeah.
is an intense grieving period where you're like, I don't know what's next, or I don't feel like me, or any of those things. And they can manifest in different ways. Like when I was postpartum, I was super quick to anger, like in that early time. And when I was
Yeah.
talking with my therapist, she was like, Allie, it's because you haven't peed when you need to go pee, or you haven't eaten when you need to eat. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'm a person. I probably need those things. And so it was just like a really elegant way, I think, to kind of like reframe some of that grief in a way that I felt like
Mm.
I wasn't going to be like wallowing or sad. That's just not how I was processing at that time. It
Yeah.
was more like anger. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. I love that you bring that to the forefront, because I think that grief will help us kind of go through the change, I think, in a more holistic way.
For real. And like, even with that, I think we're all having such individual experiences too, that like, let's take like social media can be really positive to connect people, but the negative aspect of it is like there's so much information coming at you, especially as a new mom, that you have to be so cognizant of like
Totally.
what you're taking in, who you're taking advice from, and like that your experience is different. And to be honest with you, Allie, like my pregnancy, my birth, and my postpartum experience was so positive that I
Mhm.
actually felt the delta of like, I didn't have, like, I loved childbirth. Like, I was this like crazy person who was
Totally.
obsessed with it. Right. And I had a
Same.
really great postpartum recovery where I was like, I actually felt this weird feeling of like guilt coming up, that I felt good because I thought that I was supposed to feel bad or something. Like, even the sleep
Yeah.
deprivation early on, it really didn't hit me until like maybe 4 months. I was like, oh my God, I haven't slept in a while. But like early on, I was like, I was saying to my husband behind closed doors, I'm like, am I just like really high functioning? And I was like, I'm not expecting to feel this way. And then, we all have our own experience with it, where then I
Mhm.
felt like a little bit crazy a couple months later. But truly, I just think it's like, we have to be so aware of our own experience, the thoughts that we're thinking, the stories that we're telling ourselves, the narratives
Mhm.
that we have about these chapters. And it's like, I don't want to adopt somebody else's belief in my own head and make that true for me if that's not my true experience.
It is, especially because you do have so much information. And I think like there's so many things here, honestly, that we could unpack. But like
Yeah.
even the whole like moving on to something else, like it's easy to be distracted from your emotions with social, with the experience of others, and not actually look inward to kind of unpack some
Yeah.
of your own stuff. And I
Mhm.
see that so often when it comes to pretty much any decision that you make. You're like, oh, yeah, this person's life looks great. I'm going to click and order that thing. And then they don't grieve the thing because they're just looking forward.
Yeah, so true. And
It's
because it gives you
wild.
more of a dopamine hit. Like, it's so
Totally.
much more desirable to get the dopamine hit of the new thing, the shiny object, but it's like any anything that you're working towards like has negatives associated with it. So it's like, what
Yeah.
problem do you want more? And I actually even like use this in my own head where I'm like, do I want the problem of staying the same, feeling like I'm not living up to my potential? Or do I want the problem of navigating all the emotions that come with changing and evolving? I'll pick that
Yeah.
problem because it's just a better problem, you know?
Yeah. Totally. I mean, it's tough. Like, I think there's a lot of growth, and that's why the show is called Growing Pains. Like, I do
Yeah.
believe, like, every single day is a new opportunity to learn something new, meet a new person. Like, I
Yeah.
really believe that we're only like a couple of key moves away from really changing our entire life for good and for bad. Like, if you
Yeah.
neglect your own personal health, if you neglect your relationships, like, you're a couple moves away from having a radically different life. But then it's also on the flip side. So, what do we want to pick there? And I really
Mhm.
love like some of the shifts that you've made, like particularly your real estate. I want to talk about this because it's a big
Yeah.
facet of like what you've been doing and how you've amassed incredible wealth for your family. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of moms listening, right, they love that piece of being involved in business and like stretching their creativity and stretching their mind. And they also feel a little guilty. Like, I
Mhm.
know so many moms who are like, I love this part of me. I love to be creative. I love to be a leader. I love to build my business. And they don't feel like it's integrated really well, and they really feel
Mhm.
guilty about leaving their baby. I love also what you said about if you're going to leave your son, you better damn well be excited about it because
Yeah.
we have to make sure that it's impactful. So, like when you were planning to open up your real estate portfolio and you guys had
Yeah.
that conversation, like what was going through your mind there in terms of setting your family and Brody up for success?
So the first part of it was that my husband didn't love what he was doing as a dentist. And
Mhm.
I just really wanted, like, I mean, we've been together since we were 19 years old. We met in college. And so I'm like, this is my favorite person on the planet. I want him to be excited. And he wasn't excited. So I already knew
Mhm.
that. So when he came to me with the idea of real estate, that was the first thing that was like, hell yeah, I want him to be excited. And I want to be married to someone who's excited. And I want our future kids to grow up with two parents that are excited. Like that was just like,
Oof.
that was the instant reaction.
Mhm.
From there was then, wait a second, I don't know much about real estate investing. This was like February 18th of 2022 is when we bought our first property. So not that long ago. And I was like, I don't know that much about it, but I do know that my husband's ridiculously smart. And I know that we have a lot of cash coming in from my business. And I can just imagine that these like two will line up. These things can line up really well. And that could gift me an opportunity to have more freedom that didn't require my voice, me showing up
Mm.
physically, me like it just didn't require me for us to earn income to our family. Cause even when my husband was
Mhm.
a dentist, my business was earning well, way more than he was. So we were making a lot of our plans off of the income that was coming in from my business, but that can feel like really heavy and like a lot of
Totally.
pressure. So I was like, this is an out and this is a gift to a future version of me. And this is before we even got pregnant. And we started thinking like, okay, I'm like, we are going to want to have kids. So what could this look like? And then basically we started building the portfolio from that point, really focusing on like, what could we do that could produce income that doesn't require me? And it was cool too, because then my husband got to like build out his own lane and he loves real estate investing and
Oh,
like
that's
building
amazing.
out the portfolio. And he has like all these like creative ideas. And it's so cool because we get to like overlap with each other where like I'm very like part of every decision that we're making and like the visuals and like just like everything that we're doing, the community that we build around the real estate portfolio too. But he's like the day-to-day operations of everything. So it is
Mm.
really off of my like it's a minor tab that's open, but it's not like 800 tabs that are open. So it has gifted us like a ton of opportunity to have more flexibility. So even like I mentioned this startup, like I can come into a startup which could be perceived as really risky, partially
Mm.
because we have this like we have real estate that we could live off of our assets now. And that is like
Right.
the most incredible gift and why I love talking about real estate, in particular to women, because I don't know about you, but I felt prior to getting into real estate, I was like, it just seemed like it was mostly men that were talking about investing. And they made it sound so freaking complicated when it's like, flipping a house, it's like you buy a house that's ugly, you make it prettier, and you like fix it up, and then you sell
Sell
it
it
for
for
more
more.
than you bought it. That's like, here's your Instagram host, Brad from LA, who wants me to buy your like $1 million mastermind. It's like, it's not that complicated, but I just feel like that's how people made it. And I was like, I
Yeah.
just, in particular with women that are building businesses and like wanting to create like different streams of income and wanting more time freedom, I'm like, why aren't we talking about these topics?
Yeah.
You know?
It's super interesting. I think like we talked a little bit before we press record about diversifying and picking
Yeah.
multiple lanes, and I think there's a lot of pressure too, especially in say the business owner world, but also like just for women to be like, this is who I am, right? Like I'm this
Mhm.
person, I'm this thing. Like definition is I think really key. I think it allows people to get to know us a little bit faster, or we think that it does, but then I
Yeah.
also think it puts these constraints around us, and so I love how multi passionate you are. I always say to my team at operations agency, like everybody who joins our team, I'm super huge advocate of them being something else other than an employee with us, because I think it
Mm.
rounds you out and it really helps you develop a lot of skills. But talk to me about diversifying, because I'm sure like making that jump into real estate was scary like at
Yeah.
first.
Yeah. It's interesting too because I think it was scarier for my husband who came from a very linear background. So anybody
Mm,
listening in, like I had been an entrepreneur for at that point, like gosh, 7 years. So I was really comfortable with risk and like
sure.
abnormally comfortable with risk. So for me personally, it actually wasn't that scary to jump into it. I was more so like saying to my husband, like, buy a house. Stop talking about it. Stop watching YouTube videos. Stop listening to podcasts. Buy a house, because anything that's ever
Mm,
broken on a house, I'm sure is fixable. You can probably figure it out on YouTube. Like I was so team like get in the game. But he, on the other hand, people might more relate to his process about this because he's so linear coming from like dental school. You do these procedures. You don't like YouTube how to do a root canal like while you're doing it, right? Like you have to know before you start.
yeah.
And for me, everything I had done in my business, I was literally figuring out as I was
Mhm,
going. So that was actually just like a really comfortable pattern for my nervous system was like, figure it out as you go. For him,
mhm,
it was like, we need to just get started. And once you have that first rep, just like anything, like you build up your confidence and then it just feels a little bit easier. But what was also
mhm.
really helpful was as we were doing that, we were connecting with so many people, which I'm a huge advocate of, is connecting with people that are a couple steps ahead of you. So you can
Yes.
see if they can do it, I can do it too. And then not creating a story that they have something that you don't. I have met someone that sold her company for over $1 billion. And guess what? She's literally just the same as us, right? It's just
Yeah.
she has put more reps in. She spent a lot of time building her business. And it's like, I think like making sure that we use other people as an opportunity to show us what's possible, like they're living, breathing proof of what we could do too, has been so valuable. But you have to have people around you that are just a couple steps ahead, whether that's ideally in person, but if not, like listening into their content, consuming like, their book or whatever it is, just to show you that you can too. And that's what we did early on with real estate that really helped support us was like, he would meet people, my husband would meet people, and I'm like, see, that guy's not any smarter than you. He's doing it. Like you can figure this out. And I'm in his ear, like, we can do this. Because I also just like, I'm such a visionary and I'm such a glass half full optimist. Like I just believe everything's gonna work out, which is a double-edged sword because I also
Mhm.
have to protect the downside, which is why I married someone who has the opposite skill set of me. But truly, like I can pour belief into people all day long. And I'm like, this will work. If it's worked for somebody
Yeah.
else, it can work for you too. You
Mhm.
know, that's it.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important reminder to surround yourself with people who are just a few steps ahead, because you won't be
Yeah.
like, "Oh wow, this person's super far off from where I am." And also, like they may have something different that you don't have, but you
Yeah.
might have something different that they
Yes.
don't have.
So
So I think
true.
like from a competition perspective too, like I see this especially with female entrepreneurs who are like in the
Yeah.
personal or self-development space. They're like, "Oh yeah, I can't do that because so and so did it." And I'm like, "Listen, someone is going to buy your program because they really vibe with your personality and versus that person, right?" Like it's so incredible to me how wide the world is and how many differences we can bring and caveats to different processes.
Yes.
And so I don't know, I imagine that you guys in your communities like talked through that, like zero competition platforms. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we should yell this from the rooftops for moms.
Seriously. It's so crazy too, because like everything that you just said, I would echo and put 800 explanation points after too, because I honestly think that what's been a through line for me in business is I'm always looking for things that are bugging me. Meaning, like, if
Mm,
something's not being represented the way that I think it should and it's bugging me, I've decided that it's because I'm supposed to be the representation. Like, I've just decided that. Where I'm
I
like,
love
okay,
it.
why am I not seeing seven-figure business owners that seem like they're kind of like all over the place a little bit? Well, maybe I should be that. What I'm not seeing a podcast where people are pulling back the curtain and they're sharing like what's happening in real time, where it feels like you're literally sitting next to them and you're ugly crying on your bathroom floor too with your snot and mascara getting together in your mouth. Like, why are people not doing that? Oh, I guess I'm supposed to do it. Like, and if we all just decided, like, oh, you're not seeing people that are moms of three that are building retail, like brick and mortar businesses, and you feel this like calling on your heart to do that, good. Like, it's bugging you because
Mhm,
you're supposed to do it, or you're supposed to do it your way. And
mhm.
like, Allie, I want to just like speak to this from a course perspective because I started a podcast course when everybody and their cousin had a podcast course. I started it in 2020. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
difference was like, what was bugging me is I'm like, I actually think that people don't need the information to launch a podcast as much as they need the people to remind them that their voice matters to launch their show.
Mm,
So I'm like, what if I could put like 25 women together in person and take them from idea to launching in 4 weeks? Because I also think it doesn't take that long to launch a podcast, but they could connect with each other so that when they all launch together. They've got this built in hype squad. They support each other and
yes.
then they're off to the races. So I'm like, yeah, podcast courses have been done by people that had way bigger podcasts than I did. Like I'd only had my show for a year at that point when I started that
Mhm.
course. And I was like, that doesn't mean that I can't do it. That just means that why is no one doing it the way that I want to do it? Because it's supposed to be done by me. Right. And it's like that tiny little differentiator and
Yeah.
like not getting caught up in that. It's like, what's your unique spin on it? It's just like a little remix on things that already exist. And to your point, it's like, I just wish more people would lean into that. And in particular, moms, it's like, gosh, we need to see moms that are going for it so we can see that we can do it too.
Totally. I think moms that are going for it, especially because they have such like, I mean, listen, I work nap times and 2 days a week ish. And so to
Yeah.
me, I'm over here like you can do it with limited resources and limited
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
And so that is a really important thing because I think a lot of the rhetoric around like productivity, building big businesses, amassing massive wealth are like these guys who, I mean, look, I'm not trying to burn any dudes down here, but like a lot of them don't have a lot of the responsibilities that we have or a lot of the forcing functions on our schedule. So when I see a mom out there crushing it, working 2 days a week, I'm like, dang, she's got it all together. And this is really incredible. Like, we should celebrate this. And I think
Yeah.
it's tough because I think moms are reluctant to get into the limelight. I think they're reluctant to tell, what's working because maybe they feel guilty or they feel bad because it's not working for other people. But I love this call to integration, right? Like we don't
Yeah.
have to burn our entire personal life to the ground or be a single, contributor in order
Yeah.
to have a really incredible, fruitful business.
I 100% agree. And it's just like, if you have the vision, I think you would never have been gifted the vision if you weren't also gifted the resourcefulness to figure out any how. And
Whew.
I always remind myself that where I'm like, I do not have all the resources, but I'm resourceful. So I can find the
Yes.
person or I can outsource the XYZ. And like, and then the biggest thing that like along all of that, part of my resourcefulness is literally learning how to ask for help and not making it
Yeah.
mean that I'm not capable. It's like, no,
Mhm.
I'm asking for help because, this is like my best reframe for myself on help. And I know so many moms probably need to hear this because I need to hear this sometimes is like, I know how good it feels. Like, Allie, how good does it feel helping someone else? Like, you just feel
Totally.
so good, like literally in your whole body. Like, we can all picture like the
Mhm.
last time someone said, you helped me, you impacted my life in this way, like someone driving in her car right now, like you can feel that in your body. You're like, oh my God, it's the best feeling ever. Well, now,
Mhm.
if you don't ask for help, you're robbing somebody else of that feeling because you're unwilling to ask because for whatever reason, you've decided that you're unworthy of asking for help or that it means something about your capability as a human being. If you are someone who asks for help, when in reality, I'm like, you're just over here robbing people that want to help you, but nobody can help you if you don't tell them what you need help with or that you need help in the first place. So I'm like, delegation queen. Like, I want to hang out with my son and
Love
play
it.
with him, but I don't need to like make all of his meals or do all of his laundry.
Mhm.
Like, what can I outsource, Yeah.
Totally. I love that perspective. We've had a lot of moms on the show too, like talk about this new way of like being a quote unquote like good mom, because a lot of what we were taught as, kids and things, I'm a child of the 90s. It was
Yeah.
like mom stayed home, mom cooked all the meals, mom drove us back and forth to soccer, and they did all the laundry and all the cleaning and all the things. And we didn't have like help in our house growing up. And so I think
Yeah.
that model is just starting to break, which I think is really, really, really important because I agree with you. Letting go of the cooking was really, really hard for me.
Yeah.
And it was a really similar discussion to what you're describing, Kacia.
Yeah.
My husband, Steve, cooks all of our meals,
Yep.
and he is so freaking good at it. Like,
Same
so
with
good
Gina.
at it.
Yeah.
It like loves it. He like loves it. It lights him up. He gets super excited. He's like super creative. And
Yes.
I think like if you asked him, do you jump out of the bed in the morning to like make all the meals for our family? The answer would probably be no, but I think he really enjoys that bonding through line with our kids. And
Yeah.
had I never like surrendered and been like, oh, I can't do this anymore, like I really don't think cooking is like my strongest input into this family, he would have
Yeah.
never actualized that with our kids ever.
So true. And like it's such a good gut check too for anyone listening in and myself too of like, what are the things that you've decided are your responsibility, but you haven't even had a conversation with like your main teammate? Like if you're in a
Yeah.
marriage and you have kids where it's like, my husband massively enjoys cooking and would prefer that I
Mhm.
literally never cook. I'm like the dish queen. I can do dishes and I actually don't even really like the way he loads the dishwasher. I like just like getting it done my way and I can go so
I'm the
much
same
faster.
way.
Like, let's go. Maybe this is weird, but like we do our own laundry.
Mhm.
My husband folds and puts away his own clothes and I put away my own clothes and then I do our sons. Like it's just like you kind of find your lanes, but it's like
Totally.
when we make the unspoken things spoken and like we just put it out on the table, it's like there are so many things that my husband's like, I don't mind doing that whatsoever. You didn't have to make that your job. And I'm like, why did I make that my job? Like, you're right. That doesn't have to be my job. That can be your job, or we can do like halvesies on it. You know what I mean?
Totally. And
Yeah.
it can change, right? Like it's
Yeah.
so, I think a lot of us too, like we have back to the kind of conversation about growth, like we have these ideas in our mind that because Steve's doing the cooking right now, he's always got to do the cooking. And like
Yeah.
that's not true either. So if
Mhm.
whenever that becomes an issue for him, he's got the open invitation to just be like, Allie, let's figure this out. Like this isn't what we want to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think about because I'm so fresh in like this motherhood perspective. My husband and I were just talking about this on our walk this morning where I'm like, right now I'm really comfortable with, for example, my travel schedule, like where I'm
Mm,
traveling to events and stuff every month because I don't have my son saying to me, Mom, stay home. Like I don't want you to leave. I
yeah.
don't even have to deal with that because he's literally not talking yet, right? But I'm like, a
Hmm.
year from now, I don't know what this will be like, but I'm excited about the current now that this version of me is like gung ho on this. And if things need to change, like permission to change and evolve at any point
Yeah.
in time with no other explanation other than like that doesn't serve me and my family anymore. And
Yeah.
that's
That's
like
right.
the top. That's the top of the list, you know? And that's
Yeah.
it.
I think it's really incredible. So this goes back like asking for help,
Yeah.
growing, having these types of conversations. Like it all is kind of also circling around like you getting super clear on what you want so that you can
Mhm.
communicate that to others. And I think one of the big reasons that moms don't ask for help or that we don't make confident decisions, moving forward in new seasons of business is because we don't take that time to reflect. So tell me about that, like that process for you, because I experience your confidence, I experience your enthusiasm. It's
Yeah.
very clear that you've done a lot of really cool things, but that doesn't come without like forming at least some form of confidence or direction. Even if you know you don't have everything figured out, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah. Gosh. So I'm a extremely reflective, but also verbal processing person. So I have to give myself this space to actually like process on someone else. Like I can't just
Mm,
journal this out. And I think like one of the things that's been so helpful for me is I try and gain as many tools as I can to get more self-aware. So like for example,
amazing.
I love Enneagram and I love human design. Both of
Mm,
those because they help me understand like how I'm motivated as a person and how I want to take action and then how to support myself when I'm in a season where I need to make a decision. Like, how do I think through things? Like, I cannot sit
mm.
down and meditate and then journal. I'm not going to get the answers. Like, I have to physically walk and then I have to process on someone that can just receive my word vomit. And then I can let them know if I want their feedback. Like, that's literally like, I'll go on walks with my husband and I'll just talk and then I'll come up with the answer. And then I'm like, thank you so much. That was such a great idea. And he's like, that was your idea. Right. Like, I'm like, I just needed to. Or sometimes I'll be like, hey, I need to just get this off of my plate onto you. And I don't even want your opinion. Or sometimes I'm like, I literally need your opinion. So here's the whole situation. Then I want to know what you think. So I think part of it is like finding the right people. And then on the same front, like I'm talking a lot about my husband, but like I have to have those friendships and people that can process. So not all the weight is on him. Like there are certain
Yeah.
people that I go to for advice that are a couple steps ahead of me in business, or like when we were raising capital for some of our real estate deals, I'm talking to my friends that have done that before because I want to like
Yeah.
understand how to support myself when I'm doing that. My friends that are entrepreneurs that are also new moms, like it's like building out your Rolodex of go-to people that you can go to for different aspects of your life has been so helpful for me because then I can actually get myself aligned by knowing I need to verbally process this. Otherwise, it stays in my body and then it turns into anxiety. And then I turn
Mm.
into a really annoying person to be around. And I like have to get it out. Otherwise, like it festers and then all of a sudden I'm like in this weird state. So I'm so aware, I think, by like using some of these tools to make sure that I'm not just like taking prescriptive advice from other people. I
Mm.
remember like I remember like when I was newly postpartum, I saw like a reel on Instagram, which I actually don't consume a ton of content on Instagram. I'm like really cautious of that, even though I put out content. But I saw this reel and it was this probably like 20 something year old who was telling me, like, she was saying her morning routine. And I literally actually laughed out loud where I was like, can you imagine if I thought that that's like what I needed to do to be successful? Like,
Yeah.
whoa, like my life, my circumstances, this season of life has a different success criteria, has a different way that I process. And like, I don't have like an hour every day that I can get one-on-one time with my husband to go for a walk without our child. So it's like, how can I verbally process and fit it into this stage of life too? If that answers your question.
Oh, I love that. So I'm also a verbal processor. I think that setting aside that time where like you can kind of think and then bounce something off of somebody who like is the right fit sounding
Yes.
board.
So true.
It's incredibly powerful. I just love that. And I also am not a meditator. A lot of the folks who are like, you have to meditate, I love that it works for them. Like, that's my favorite thing for them. And I'm like a big time walker, pacer.
Yes.
I also talk to myself a lot. Do you
Yeah, me too.
align with
I do
that?
too.
Like,
Yep,
I'm a big
totally.
time. When it was just me and my husband and our dog, Lucy, we lived just north of Nashville for 4 years. And I would like pace around our backyard when I first started my business. And I would just talk out things to myself out loud. And
So,
our
so
dog
good.
would just watch me and be like, what the heck is this woman doing?
That's so amazing. I'm obsessed
Because
with
I
that.
didn't have like the cash flow to like hire a coach or anything at the
Yeah.
time. So I was just like, I got to be myself. My sounding
So
board.
good. See, resourceful. Yeah. It's
Yes.
never a lack of resources. It's a lack of resourcefulness. That's,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. I love
Kacia,
that.
I'm going to link your podcast to the episodes that we talked about specifically so that moms who want to just go in and have a little bit more of you, your processing and how you kind of went through that stuff. But if moms are listening and they're like, I want more Kacia, where do they go?
Yeah. I love you. I just like want to hug you and I can't wait. I love that we like live in the same city. Yeah. My podcast is called Empower Her and I drop 2 episodes every week. So you can go check that out. My husband and I have a real estate podcast called Get Investing, GHET, because our last name is Ghetmiri, where we like, it's a cool dynamic because it's like husband and wife talking about real estate and we have very
So
different
good.
personalities. So if you're into that at all, you can check that out. And then social media, my favorite platform is Instagram. You can find me at Kacia Ghetmiri.
My gosh. Thank you so much, Kacia, for taking the time. I think so many women are probably going to leave like inspired and really motivated. You have an energy that's just so like intoxicating. Like you are just excited. And it's really hard to like watch something that you've put out or listen to something that you've put out and not walk away feeling like, yeah, I got this. Like I totally have this. So I think
Thanks,
you
Allie.
super inspire confidence. Like, and I think that's such a gift. So just reflecting that back to you as you like jump into this new venture with the startup. But for any moms listening who are like, you guys talked about a lot of stuff and I'm feeling inspired and confident. Like what, like would you leave them with? Like what next steps could they do to just really start to kind of move in the directions that we spoke about today?
Yeah, I think I would just tell them like to be on their own team. I think it's so easy as moms, as ambitious moms, that when you put your head on your pillow at night, it's like you have this laundry list of all of the things that you didn't get done. But in reality, it's like celebrating yourself for the fact that like you're lapping a prior version of you who was too scared to even try starting, right? Or like you're handling something better now than a prior version of you would. And like I just have this really like strong relationship with a version of me from 1 year ago where I contrast back and I'm like, gosh, thank you so much for all the work that you put in as a person in your marriage and your health, whatever it is to get you to this point. And then I also have that same relationship with the 1 year ahead version of me where I'm like, how is me showing up now contributing to that person that I want to become? Like what gifts am I giving her in terms of this work that I'm doing on my mental health, my emotional health, the community that I'm building, my income, my impact, whatever. Like, it's like, we're always like, we're going to spend every single second of every single day with ourselves. That's the only guarantee that we have. So it's like, make sure that like you're taking inventory of those thoughts and like recognize how far you've come, not just like how far you think that you need to go,
Such an incredible reminder. And I love the like tactical, like get that person in your brain, you a year from now, you a year ago. This was so freaking inspiring.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I'm so glad
Thank you
that we can do this.
Thank
So
you.
thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you making the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.